Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. We recently started a series that looks in depth at the history of the Jedi Order and how the average person in the galaxy viewed the Jedi Order at various times in their history. So far, we've looked at the ancient pre-Republic era. The ancient Jedi were more or less confined to the deep core, and very few outsiders had ever seen or heard about them. In the rest of the galaxy, there were Force sensitives scattered all over the place, but their numbers were so few that they still remained a hidden secret for most of the galaxy. After leaving the deep core for wild space, the Jedi began establishing diplomatic relations with the galactic government and even aided them in one of the Republic's earliest wars against the Tianese Empire. Punitive actions taken unjustly by the Republic after the war was over made the Jedi wary of becoming too close to the Republic military, so they essentially left the Republic military and established a role as peacekeepers for themselves in the Republic. By 12,000 BBY, the Jedi had already served and protected the Republic for thousands of years. They finally decided to leave the Republic after Chancellor Perslia was assassinated and Chancellor Contispex I took power. Contispex I was a member of the Pious Day faith, a human-centric anti-Xeno religion that had a lot of redeeming qualities but ultimately carried out costly and unjust wars and genocides that plunged the galaxy into chaos. For 1,000 years, the Contispex dynasty waged war against every Xeno threat in the galaxy. The Jedi more or less remained neutral during this time period until the reign of Contispex XIX. The Jedi would carry out a raid and arrest the Chancellor and remove him from power. At the same time, the Jedi suspended the Galactic Senate and placed one of their own Grand Master Beal Duckvis in the position of Supreme Chancellor. This was an extremely controversial move by the Jedi. Although most historians perceive the Contispex dynasty as one of the worst moments in Republic history, the Contispex dynasty still had their supporters, especially amongst the more human-populated and rich core worlds of the galaxy. The Jedi Coup could easily be labeled as illegal and a complete overreach of their power by individuals who supported Pious Day. It was also technically against the Jedi Code to be involved in politics and engage in the power structure. But of course, Grand Master Beal Duckvis would not be the last Jedi Chancellor. A good portion of the Republic citizens' population also believed that it was wise to have a Jedi in this leadership position. They believed that the mystical monks were somehow more impartial and less power-hungry than your average politician. 26,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, the Force Wars occurred and destroyed the ancient Jedi after the group splintered into a light and dark side faction. In 24,500 BBY, the Great Schism occurred after the young Jedi Zendor created the Legions of Leto and rejected the Jedi Order's teachings. Both Force Wars generated a massive amount of destruction and devastation, all over an ideological battle between the dark side and light side that the average citizen in the galaxy completely did not understand. The Force Wars would ravage the surface of Tython, making it uninhabitable, whereas the Great Schism quickly spread across the galaxy and even to Coruscant, making what was an internal battle into a much greater galaxy-wide struggle. The rest of the galaxy was not completely familiar with the Jedi just yet, but those unlucky individuals who witnessed these Force Wars probably were terrified by what they saw. The reality was that Force sensitives were superhumans and had superhuman capabilities, which meant that the battles they fought were oftentimes much more deadly than conventional ones, and the collateral damage caused by these battles oftentimes was devastating as well. By 7,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, the Second Great Schism occurred after a group of Dark Jedi exiles left the Order and started experimenting with Force alchemy. Force alchemy was one of the most powerful schools of the Force, and the ancient Jedi had used this branch of Force abilities to create life itself. It was later labeled as an unnatural art that was associated with the dark side by the Jedi Order. The Jedi Order would engage the rogue Jedi in what would become known as the 100 Years of Darkness. It was one of the first conflicts in which lightsaber technology was used by both sides. At the time, lightsabers still had large power packs that had to be worn on the hip, so they were a bit clunky. But the lightsaber would become an iconic imagery associated with the Jedi only because only basically Force sensitives were skillful enough to use these laser weapons. The Dark Jedi's main strategy in the war was to use alchemy to summon terrifying creatures like the Leviathan. But ultimately, their numbers were way too small compared to the Jedi Order, and one by one they would be hunted down until only 12 of them were left. While the Republic wisely wanted public execution for these remaining dark side wizards, the Jedi instead wanted the Dark Jedi to be exiled into the unknown region, where they could probably contemplate about what they did and see the errors of their ways. Such was the arrogance and naivete of the Jedi Order. What actually occurred was that these 12 exiles landed on a planet known as Korriban, populated by a species known as the Sith. The Sith were a Force-sensitive species with dark side affinity. When the Dark Jedi arrived, their more advanced training made them far more powerful than even the King of the Sith, and so the Sith began worshipping these 12 exiles, and the most powerful of these Dark Jedi, Ajunta Pal, became the first Dark Lord of the Sith. The Dark Jedi quickly transformed the Sith from a primitive species to a modernized one with advanced technology and social structures and, of course, a modern military. Quickly, the Sith would expand from Korriban and take over neighboring worlds, creating the First Sith Empire. Its sole purpose, of course, was to eradicate the Jedi. Now, not a lot of people in the Republic even know about the true origins of the Sith and how the Jedi really led directly to their creation. If this knowledge was more public, it would definitely destroy the Jedi's public image. Now, after 2,000 years of unharassed growth, the Sith Empire was finally ready to strike out against the Republic. This would be the beginning of the Great Hyperspace War and the first clash between the Sith Empire and the Old Republic. The Republic, as usual, was unprepared for the war. It mainly relied on regional defense forces and had a very small federal military, if any. The Dark Lord Naga Shadow would deploy numerous Sith fleets to invade Republic worlds. He used the terrifying Massassi warriors and Sith meditation spheres to create the illusion of massive armies to make his force seem much larger than it actually was. Ultimately, the Republic still had numbers on their side compared to the Sith Empire, and the Jedi were pretty quick to come to the Republic's rescue this time because this was an ideological battle against the dark side of the Force, something they really liked engaging in. And so quickly, Naga Shadow found himself overstretched and biting off a lot more than he could handle. And so the Sith Empire retreats back to Korriban. At this point, Supreme Chancellor Poltimo took an extremely hardline approach and called for the counter-invasion of Sith space. Amongst his directives was the complete destruction and eradication of Sith civilization and culture and heritage. This ultimately led to the complete destruction of Korriban and a campaign of destruction against the Sith that modern historians accurately label as a genocide. We probably need to do an entire video about this very dark period in Jedi history. The Sith Empire at the time was made up of mostly normal people. Although their government was heavily into dark magic and very unnatural uses of the Force, the Sith Empire itself was not intrinsically evil. And so a great fear emerged from the civilian populace about the incoming Republic invasion. And rightly so, not only were the Republic and Jedi destroying Sith cities, culture, and art, they were also carrying out mass executions and detainments that led to high amounts of civilian deaths. The civilians of the Sith Empire feared the Jedi above all else, partly because of their own government's propaganda and because of what they were capable of on the battlefield. The Jedi were seen as the vanguards of the Republic threat that was coming to destroy them. At the same time, the view that the Jedi were now the peacekeepers and guardians of the Republic became widespread. The Jedi defense of Coruscant during the Great Hyperspace War, along with how they were able to figure out how to counter Sith magic, made them saviors. Without the Jedi, the Republic would have had an immense amount of difficulty trying to fight off the Sith Empire. But by this point, it was already too late. The Sith Empire had grown way too large, and the immortal Sith Lord Vitiate had already evacuated a large portion of the Sith Empire before the Republic counter-invasion had started. Vitiate and his fleet would head off further into the unknown, looking for the lost colony of Dromund Kaas. The journey was long and dangerous, and ultimately it took them 20 years to finally rediscover the world. It was on Dromund Kaas that Vitiate would re-establish the Sith Empire and slowly plot to destroy the Jedi and the Republic. While the Sith Empire was preparing for another war, in 4250 the Jedi experienced their second Great Schism. This would be the fourth Force War that had been started by the Jedi, and would point to signs that this would probably become a regular occurrence in galactic history. By 4000 BBY, the next threat emerged in the form of a giant Mandalorian crusade that was actually a Sith Empire proxy. The Jedi Order failed to act because they didn't realize the Sith were behind this new war. A faction of the Jedi led by the young Knight Revan ended up joining the Republic war effort. But the horrors of the war eventually would corrupt Revan, and then during the Battle of Malachtar, he would unleash a dreadful superweapon that would wipe out the entire Mandalorian fleet and a good portion of his own fleet. Revan would then hide the mask of Mandalore, which would leave the Mandalorian people leaderless for many generations. As a result, the Mandalorians who already hated the Jedi would just hate the Jedi more for the rest of their existence. Revan would then venture off into the unknown in search for the hidden Sith Emperor. When he finally found the Sith Emperor, he was corrupted by him and overwhelmed, and would return to the Republic at the head of a massive Sith invasion, starting the devastating Jedi Civil War. The Jedi Civil War with Revan at its helm would completely destroy the image of the Jedi Order. There was a reoccurring pattern now. Famous Jedi would fight for the Republic and then become corrupted and then turn into a Sith. Many civilians in the galaxy were really only concerned with what happened in their local systems, and now these devastating ideological wars were basically ruining their lives, and a lot of their anger went towards these mystical monks. The constant warfare that would plague this time period slowly destroyed all the progress and stability established by the Republic. And of course, if you guys know about Old Republic history, things only get worse. The Jedi are basically purged. Coruscant is sacked by the Sith in a surprise attack, and then the new Sith Wars happens a few thousand years later, which makes things even worse. In our next episode, we'll talk a little bit about the new Sith War and then how that leads into the Ruusan Reformation period, and finally, the Clone Wars. So don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on that episode. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.